What if I told you that the most frightening moment in any bond isn't the loud shouting, the pointed attacks, or even the ultimate deception? It's the deep silence that sets in when an empath definitively withdraws their care. Listen closely, because what occurs next will fundamentally rewrite every assumption you've held about true emotional strength. Carl Jung uncovered a truth that most people fail to grasp until the consequences are irreversible. He proposed that every psyche has a threshold point, not where it fractures beyond repair, but where it undergoes a complete metamorphosis. And nowhere is this change more starkly demonstrated than in the empath who hits their absolute limit. You see, people mistakenly view an empath's willingness to care as an inexhaustible resource. But Jung's extensive work revealed a reality far more complex and, frankly, much more ominous. Here is the key insight most people miss about empaths. And trust me, by the conclusion of this, you will never take their deep capacity for empathy lightly again. According to Carl Jung, the human mind operates through a principle he termed psychological compensation. When an energy is rigidly suppressed for too long, it doesn't simply dissipate. It actively transforms into its extreme opposite. The empath who is constantly overcared, given without limit, and loved with unsustainable depth eventually reaches what Jung defined as an antiodromia. This is the precise juncture where internal dynamics fully flip into reverse. And when an empath ceases to care, the shift is not gradual, it is absolute and total. Pay close attention to the mechanics of this precise instant, because this is the moment where everything changes without possibility of return. Carl Jung observed that empaths exist in a relentless state of emotional labor. They bear not just the weight of their own inner life, but the burdens of everyone around them. They sense the dominant mood of a place before they even step inside. They soak up distress like emotional sponges, holding the self-belief that they possess the capacity to mend what is broken in others. But Jung made a crucial finding. This state is fundamentally unsustainable. And when the final breaking point is reached, it is not a disastrous collapse. It is what Jung called a psychological breakthrough. Here is the part of Jung's understanding that will completely change your perspective. When an empath stops caring, they are not actually becoming cold. They are finally becoming whole. They are, at last, integrating what Jung referred to as their shadow self. This is the essential part of themselves they have persistently denied. The essential part that possesses the strength to enforce a firm no. The part that grasps that not every single person merits automatic access to their vulnerable heart. The part that clearly identifies those individuals who function as emotional vampires and will drain their life force completely. According to Carl Jung's ultimate theory of individuation, a critical moment arrives when an individual must decisively choose themselves. For most individuals, this self-prioritization occurs naturally over time. But for empaths, this necessary choice feels devastatingly like a profound betrayal because they have been relentlessly conditioned to believe that self-care is inherently selfish. But Jung conclusively discovered that self-abandonment is the greatest and most insidious violence we inflict upon our own mental well-being. And when an empath finally ceases this internal violence, something truly remarkable occurs. They don't lose their essential empathy. They gain their unyielding boundaries. Here is the element that becomes truly compelling. Carl Jung suggested that the most intense transformations take place in a sudden flash of radical clarity. In one moment, the empath is still attempting to connect, still holding on to hope, still pouring their vital energy into relationships that act as bottomless voids. In the very next moment, they simply and cleanly stop. Not with a dramatic outburst of rage, not with a theatrical scene, but with what Jung named psychological sovereignty, a complete, quiet ownership of self. They achieve absolute clarity for the first time, and what they are able to see instantly reconfigures their entire world. According to Carl Jung, There exists a profound, clear distinction between genuine care and destructive self-annihilation. Empaths habitually blur this vital line because they are erroneously taught that their entire worth is intrinsically tied to how much pain they can withstand, how much betrayal they can overlook, how much they can endlessly give. But Jung determined that genuine, unshakable strength is not found in merely enduring abuse. It is found in the firm refusal to continue participating in your own fundamental diminishment. When an empath decides to stop caring, they are not giving up on the potential of others. They are finally and completely showing up for themselves. But here is the observation that should deeply affect you. Carl Jung definitively noted that manipulators rely on the empath's continuous caring as their primary instrument of control. They fully understand that if they can successfully make the empath feel overwhelmingly guilty, disproportionately responsible, or eternally hopeful, they can keep them perpetually bound. But when an empath achieves what Jung referred to as emotional detachment, the entire manipulative dynamic instantly collapses. The manipulator's carefully chosen words no longer have an impact. The aggressive guilt tactics harmlessly bounce off. The sudden, intense love bombing feels blatantly transparent. The empath has, at long last, developed what Jung called psychological immunity. And this is the exact moment when the power dynamics are fully and permanently reversed. According to Carl Jung's extensive research, when an individual stops caring, they are not operating from corrosive bitterness. They are operating from unimpeachable clarity. The newly awakened empath does not hate the person who betrayed them. They simply perceive that person accurately for the very first time, without the softening distortion of false hope, without the obscuring filter of misplaced compassion, without the self-delusion that love, by itself, can magically repair what deliberately refuses to heal. Jung termed this state radical acceptance, and it is profoundly liberating. Here is the final, crucial piece that renders this transformation utterly unstoppable. Carl Jung concluded that the single most powerful position in any human relationship is indifference that is born from true wisdom, not apathetic exhaustion born from being drained. When an empath stops caring, they do not become deliberately cruel. They become instantly unavailable. They do not actively seek a harsh retribution or revenge. They simply disappear from the entire equation. They stop exhaustively explaining their position. They stop passionately defending their reality. They stop attempting to force people to understand their worth. They reach what Jung called psychological completion, a state where their inherent sense of self no longer requires the validation of external sources. And that, according to Carl Jung's entire lifetime of study, is the precise moment when an empath becomes genuinely formidable. Not because they will deliberately inflict pain upon you, but because they will finally walk away for good. And this time, there is no heartfelt apology that can reach their depth, no empty promise that can convince them to stay, no manipulative tactic that possesses the gravity to pull them back. They have simply stopped caring. And in that crucial cessation, they have rediscovered something infinitely more valuable than any relationship that required them to abandon their own soul. They found their certain way back home to the person they always inherently were, before the world relentlessly convinced them that caring had to equate to suffering. This is the profound truth of what occurs when an empath finally stops caring. And once you truly understand it, you will realize that their ability to care was never a weakness. It was a spectacular gift. And when that gift is permanently withdrawn, what remains is the most powerful force you will ever stand next to. Someone who has learned that the single most important person to care for is themselves.